The metformin story starts not in a lab, but in the meadows of Europe. A plant called Galega officinalis, French lilac, goat's rue, had been used in folk medicine for centuries to treat excessive urination, which we now recognize as a symptom of diabetes. In 1922, chemists synthesized a compound from the plant's active ingredients. They called it metformin. But it took another 35 years before a French doctor named Jean Stern tested it in humans and realized it could lower blood sugar without the toxicity of earlier diabetes drugs. Metformin was approved in France in 1957, in the UK in 1958. But the FDA didn't approve it until 1995, nearly 40 years later. Today, over 150 million prescriptions are written for metformin every year. It's one of the most studied, most prescribed, and cheapest drugs in the world. And for the last decade, it's been at the center of a debate about whether a 3-cent pill can slow down aging. Unlike rapamycin, which has a single, elegant target mTOR, metformin's mechanism is messy. It seems to work through multiple pathways at once, and researchers still argue about which is the most important. The leading theory is that metformin mildly inhibits complex I of the mitochondrial electron transport chain. This reduces your cell's energy charge, the ratio of AMP to ATP goes up, and that activates an enzyme called AMPK. AMPK is a master metabolic regulator. When it's on, your cells switch from growth mode to repair mode. They start recycling damaged components, reducing inflammation, and improving insulin sensitivity. But here's where it gets complicated. AMPK knockout mice still respond to metformin, which proves there are AMPK-independent pathways. Metformin also changes your gut microbiome, suppresses glucagon signaling, and increases GLP-1 secretion, the same mechanism that Ozempic targets. The fact that metformin works through so many pathways might be its greatest strength, or a sign that none of them is particularly powerful. We just don't know. This is where the metformin story gets uncomfortable for its advocates. The intervention testing program, the gold standard for testing longevity drugs in mice, tested metformin and got disappointing results. In the first ITP study, metformin showed no significant lifespan extension in either sex. The researchers tried again at higher doses. Males got a 6% extension. Females got nothing. Compare that to rapamycin, which extends mouse lifespan by 10 to 30% in both sexes, at multiple doses, in every cohort ever tested. Other animal studies tell a similar story. Metformin extends lifespan in diabetic mouse models, but in normal, healthy mice? The effect is marginal at best. This creates a strange situation. Metformin has the weakest animal evidence of any major longevity intervention, but the strongest human epidemiological data. The animal-human disconnect is real, and nobody has a satisfying explanation for it. The human data is where metformin shines, but you have to understand the caveats. Let's start with the strongest evidence. The UKPDS study, published in 1998, followed thousands of type 2 diabetics for over a decade. The metformin group had 36% lower all-cause mortality, 42% fewer diabetes-related deaths, and 39% fewer heart attacks. These results have held up in multiple follow-ups. Then there's the cancer data. Multiple meta-analyses show that diabetics on metformin have about 30% lower cancer incidence and mortality across breast, colorectal, and pancreatic cancers. And then there's the famous Bannister paper from 2014, which compared diabetics on metformin to non-diabetic controls and found that the diabetics on metformin actually lived longer. That's right, people with diabetes on metformin outlived healthy people without it. That's the result that made everyone pay attention. But here's the problem with all of this. Every single study is observational. People who take metformin tend to be more health conscious. They see doctors regularly. They have better access to healthcare. This is called healthy user bias, and it means we cannot be sure the drug is causing the benefits, or if it's just correlated with healthier lifestyles. This is why the TAME trial matters so much. TAME stands for Targeting Aging with Metformin, and it's led by Dr. Nir Barzilai at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Here's what makes it historic. The FDA approved a clinical trial where the endpoint is aging itself. Not a specific disease, the combined risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia, and death. The idea is that if you slow aging, you delay all of these at once. And the FDA agreed that this is a valid way to test a drug. The trial would enroll 3,000 non-diabetic adults aged 65 to 79. They'd take 1,500 milligrams of metformin or placebo for 6 years. And the primary endpoint is simple: does metformin delay the first occurrence of any major age-related disease or death? If TAME is positive, it would be the first demonstration that a generic, inexpensive drug can slow human aging. It would change medicine. But TAME has a problem. Metformin is generic, so no pharmaceutical company will fund the trial. The budget is $50 to $75 million. As of 2026, Barzillai is still raising the money. The trial is designed. The FDA has approved it. But it hasn't started enrolling yet. On safety, metformin has a remarkably good profile for a drug that's been taken by hundreds of millions of people. The most common side effects are gastrointestinal. About 20 to 30% of people experience diarrhea, nausea, or bloating when starting. The fix is simple: use the extended release version and titrate up slowly over weeks. Most people adapt. Lactic acidosis is the side effect everyone fears, but it's essentially a myth at this point. The historical scare came from a related drug called fenformin, which was pulled in the 1970s because it caused lactic acidosis at high rates. Metformin is 10 to 20 times safer. The Cochrane review found zero increased risk compared to placebo. But here's the side effect that's genuinely underappreciated: B12 deficiency. Long-term metformin use depletes vitamin B12 in 10 to 30% of users. It interferes with calcium-dependent B12 absorption in the small intestine. And here's the insidious part: B12 deficiency causes fatigue, neuropathy, and cognitive decline. Symptoms that look exactly like aging. Many doctors don't check for it. The recommendation is simple: annual B12 monitoring and supplementation if needed. So where does metformin stand in 2026? It's the most studied drug for human longevity, with decades of epidemiological data suggesting real benefits. It's incredibly safe, incredibly cheap, and available worldwide. But the animal evidence is surprisingly weak. The healthy user bias clouds all the human data. And the one trial that could settle the question, TAME, hasn't started yet. Metformin represents both the promise and the problem of longevity science. We have strong reasons to think it works. We have decades of real-world data. But we don't have the randomized controlled trial in healthy humans that would prove it. Until TAME reports, metformin remains what it's always been: a safe, cheap diabetes drug with intriguing signals that it might do more. The science is promising, but not proven. If you're thinking about metformin for longevity, talk to a doctor, get your B12 checked, and wait for the TAME results before making any assumptions. Subscribe for more evidence-based longevity deep dives. And drop a comment: are you taking metformin, or waiting for the data?